Hello, my soccer universe. My name is Roland and this is Football Talk. And unfortunately, again, record a little bit late. And again, it will be more or less a review, but I want to do it a little bit more personal in this audio-only version because setting up a video would have been a little bit too much work at this very moment. What a weekend it was. It was again a perfect weekend of mine. And I think this season, this is now the third where both of my favorite teams have won. So a 6-point weekend. And I gotta say, this might have been the best of them all, because both of my clubs won pretty huge games. LASK Win the Derby away from home for the first time since the two new stadiums in Linz are up. A team has scored in the other stadium and also has gotten a win. And suddenly things in LASK are very rosy. How the tables have turned over this past month or so. And Milan also got a humongous 1-0 home win over Roma that makes the top of Serie A now even tighter. But we also have to say, while there were times they could have pulled away, they were also very, very lucky to not be down by at least 2 goals when they scored. And yeah, Mike Maignan had to come on with a big save as well. And then there were plenty of storylines all around Europe, but I think nothing that really stood out all that much. I mean, Arsenal are still imperious. We have that, of course, Real Madrid and the whole Vini saga has been put to bed now, finally. In Germany, Bayern. I mean, Bayern is a team that I have a really hard time saying how good they really are. I guess today that these posts, they play against PSG, that will tell us something. PSG have been much better in the Champions League than they have been in the league so far. There they have been a little bit faltering, but at least this time they also got a win. But yeah, definitely interesting stuff overall. And yeah, there were some pretty wild results in the Netherlands, but not necessarily involving the big teams. A similar story, Portugal, I think, was not so great. But we'll come to all that. But for this one, I want to actually start out with the match that really impacted me the most. And that was the derby against in Linz, Blau-Weiß against LASK. And I have to tell you, usually I'm really, really nervous ahead of this one. Derbies are never fun in Linz, at least if you're a LASK fan. Why? Because as a LASK fan, you're always expected to win. You're always the favorite. You're the way bigger club, way bigger club. However, the record against Blau-Weiß Linz doesn't show the dominance. It's not like in Madrid, where there's a way bigger club in there and the other one tries to catch up, but Real Madrid still dominate the overall scoreline. In Linz, it's actually almost embarrassingly so even. And yes, it also depends on how you're counting the derby, whether you see FC Blau-Weiß Linz as a successor club to the former SK First Linz, champions of Austria in 1974, or do you see them as a new club, or count them with another team that they were formed out of? It's a little bit of a blurry line there. The fan bases definitely see themselves as a continuation of the former Austrian champions, a more working class thing. It's also an interesting rivalry in the sense that we don't really have anything too much like that in Austria. The conservative club is the bigger one, which is unusual, but it also tells you the status of Linz, that was always kind of a mercantile city up until the industry has been put there, the steel industry, in World War II, and we don't need to go into too much detail. You can imagine which guy was hugely responsible for that one. And then a working class came, and this is then when a derby came, but at that point LASK has already been established. LASK in additional is not only a club from Linz, but also is the representative of Upper Austria, very much so. So that in the whole region, a little bit like Bayern, Bayern within Bavaria, except the Franconia region. So yeah, it's a very interesting thing there. I mean, the only other derby where there's maybe something like that, where you have one club representing more the region, the other one more the city club. And the city club in this case is the working class club, FC Blau-Weiß Linz. would be in Styria with the Grazer Derby, where Sturm now I think have probably just about established themselves also as an over-regional team. But I think it was always, to me at least, a little bit more a city club versus city club rivalry, where just the surroundings were also involved. But probably since GRK was always the more academic club, that these would probably count it more as a city club, and Sturm was always the one for the masses, therefore attracting other people. But Sturm, again, a little bit more, I don't want to say working class, because that wouldn't be right, but they are definitely more the outsiders of society, not the elite. I shouldn't say outsiders, not the elite, the mass. Whereas LASK, weirdly enough, has this, they are everyone but working class, but this includes the rural areas around. So in that sense, really, really, really unique. Really unique was also what was happening on the pitch. I mean, it was played in the small stadium of Blau-Weiß Linz. Understandably so, although it's a little bit of a shame I was not there. I was watching it on TV. And the game started out really brightly early on, with Blau-Weiß probably having the best chance through a header of Ronivaldo, who has been hurting us in previous derbies. LASK was more or less, there were some crosses in that just didn't find the striker who could have put it in. But overall, you could see the last pass was missing. But I think after 20 minutes, the game stalled a little bit. LASK did have then the better of the game, and Samuel Adeniran had actually two good chances. One, I think, would have gone wide, but the goalie saved it for a corner, and then another one, if he puts it in the near instead of the far corner, I think it could have been 1-0 already in the first half. But I also have to say what was happening in terms of tifos on the stands and the whole atmosphere. I mean, this was a charged stadium in every meaning. This is real derby atmosphere, something that is not so common in Austria. I think the Linz Derby is really about here to establish itself as the third big derby fixture in Austria, because we don't have that many. I mean, it's Vienna, the big Vienna Derby, it is Graz, and now it is Linz, and all of them have their own unique twist. Second half, after a long delay because of fog of the pyro. I mean, LASK had actually scored immediately before that, but it was unfortunately offside in the build-up. Would have been a really pretty goal. But actually, the 6-minute wait, you could see that Blau-Weiß were still not quite settled. LASK really singling out the right side of their defense and running right through it. And if then also the Miranda, the club captain and kind of the organizer of defense, makes an error, lets Bello run through to the touchline where he can pick out where he wants to play the ball to. In the end, he finds a Adeniran, and it's 1-0 in the 54th minute. And that moment, LASK definitely had the upper hand. Probably should have doubled the lead, but I also have to say, the game stayed tight. But there was really not much coming from Blau-Weiß. LASK basically kept a clean sheet again, and it was rather easy overall. And the only excitement came through absolutely nonsensical penalty calls in favor of Blau-Weiß Linz that were then taken away by VAR. It really seemed like the referee wanted to give Blau-Weiß a goal. Maybe he was taken over by the atmosphere. But I also have to say, I think after this game, any criticism on VAR, and VAR is a little bit on the chopping block in Austria, also gotta say, should be taken out. It's crazy. Without VAR, Blau-Weiß get 2 penalties and probably win a derby that they had no business winning. Let's put it that way. But LASK win that one, and now for the first time in the top 6, because other results again fell their way. It is so amazing what is happening at the moment, and I know it's not gonna continue. But from being one of the worst defenses of the league, we have now not conceded in 3 consecutive Bundesliga games, and suddenly are in the top 6. Still, I would say slight outsiders to make it, but the team is changed ever since Coach Didi Kübauer took over. If you look at the other results, I mean, even at the same time with the Linz Derby, GRK got the first win of the season, a 12th game of the season, fully deservedly so, and well overdue. You could see Coach Feldhofer was having tears in his eyes, but they had to work really, really hard, because as soon as they got the go-ahead goal, Altach equalized with a Greil free kick that, just into the near corner, that bouncing into the net because no one was providing coverage, but then an own goal and a very, very late Harakate goal, and one where I have to say the Harakate should have scored a little bit more as well. Hartberg again showed a good form, and this time they hold on to a lead. They strike very quickly against Austria Vienna. In the first half, have a 2-0 lead. Yes, Wiesinger pulls one back, but Austria Vienna is again, defensively, they are suddenly not solid. Because both of the goals were rather avoidable, and yeah, Austria Vienna had this huge high after the Derby win, and suddenly they're again 2 games in, and they're again in a sort of crisis mode. I just don't get it. It's a very unstable team. Unstable team also is something that you would describe Red Bull Salzburg at, but Red Bull Salzburg get another win, and it's another 3-goal win, and they're scoring goals. I think in the league, while you look at them, especially in Europe, and say they're not themselves and they should play with a whole lot more confidence, the league at least they get it done. But also I have to say, SV Ried were down to 10 men when it was 2-1 with a last man offense on the halfway line, but I can see why. There were also 2 really pretty goals, the equalizer for Ried by Mutandwa and the go-ahead goal by Kitano, absolutely brilliantly played. And then, in garbage time, Salzburg add 2 more, but they getting the result, and with other results going their way, Salzburg are now top of the table, which, if you ask anyone following the Austrian Bundesliga, seems absolutely nonsensical. Not much said about Wolfsburg against VSG Tirol, 0-0 draw, but there's a lot that should be said about Rapid against Sturm, which was the other one that moved the masses. I mean, these are the most well-supported clubs in Austria at the moment. It's a game that Sturm Graz probably doesn't know how they managed to get through, to be honest, or how they managed to lose. But lose they did, although they had control. I mean, it was a rather intense, meaning not so good, but a lot of fighting first half, where they took the lead through Malone, and it was Rapid goalkeeper Gartler, their backup, that is now starting, I think, a 3rd game in a row, that kept Rapid in the game. I mean, at halftime, there were some good changes made. Gulliksen coming on for Rapid, but it needed a miracle free kick in a way. I mean, Seidel kind of suggests that he will put the cross in, and then he takes it directly onto the near corner with absolute might. It was probably the goal of the round. But yeah, that then changed the momentum in Rapid's favor. They created suddenly more chances, and then it's a Lavallee own goal. And given what he has done in the midweek, yeah, karma's a bitch for you. Sturm Graz cannot find an equalizer, and so the top of the table at Austria is actually quite exciting. We have Salzburg now on top with 24 points. Sturm Graz only 4th place, 3 points behind, but with a game in hand. Rapid, point behind. Wolfsburg seemingly is also losing touch. And then we have the huge pack of chasers for the top 6 spot, where at the moment it's Hartberg, LASK Austria at 16 points, and then Altach, Ried and VSG are only 2 or 3 points behind that spot. So this could also be interesting. And I would say, if I look at teams, let's say the 3 16-point teams, if they can get a winning run going, I think it's not unrealistic to even climb further up the table and get in there, and especially once points are halved. Yeah, I don't want to say it, but there are people that saying, if LASK make it top 6 and it stays that tight, there might be a championship in there, which I think is absolutely ridiculous when we have been talking a month ago that we might get relegated, which I never thought that we would, but it tells you how crazy the situation at the moment is in Austria. Let's move over to a rather eventful Serie A weekend. First off, Atalanta have lost their first game of the season. Yes, they have plenty of draws, and actually there are some voices that say that Ivan Juric is already on a chopping block. They have lost 1 game all season. Yes, they cannot score goals. some might say this is a hallmark of your rich teams, but I honestly have to say that would come a little bit too soon for me because I think his job was done very well. Napoli also only a 0-0 at home to Como, a Como side that honestly, if they keep on playing like this, it's not inconceivable that Como might actually make it into Europe this year. Maybe more. Will also depend on how much the other teams will be in there, will performing in Europe, getting an extra spot. This could potentially help Como, but it really looks good for Como. Como could have gone even better because Morata had his penalty saved by Milinkovic-Savic that he also cost. And we also have to say that, Milinkovic-Savic kept Napoli very much in that game. Spalletti got a really good 2-1 away win at Cremonese. Juventus looking actually quite solid, and that without Kenan Yildiz. And it got only nervy once Jamie Vardy pulled another one back, so he scores now in second goal already. The first one was on the past weekend against Atalanta. Then Inter had only a 1-1 draw in the rain in Verona. Yes, brilliant Zielinski goal, probably the goal of the weekend. Absolute stunner. Verona get a lucky equalizer, hanging on. I mean, I saw the last 50 minutes, and yes, Inter were pressing for that winner. On the other side, there were the chances for Verona there. If they're a little bit calmer, they probably could have also snatched the win. And Sommer did not look good overall, but in the end, it's an own goal. Yeah, Pio Esposito was there, but in stoppage time, that give Inter the win. And at that point, they closed the gap to Napoli to a single point. And it was then all about the game in the evening. But before we get to that, we had Fiorentina losing again at home to Lecce, despite creating chances before Lecce took the lead, and then completely losing the nerve. Fiorentina at the moment is a powder keg. There was a penalty given for Fiorentina, and still don't quite understand why it was then taken away. Because yes, Ranieri touches his own leg falling down, but he only does so because there was contact before by the Lecce defender, so I really don't get it. But he went berserk there, and everyone there, I mean, not letting the referee watch this Fiorentina are a mess. At the same time, and I kind of regret that I watched the Fiorentina game, Torino-Pisa played out a crazy 2-2 draw, a mad first half. Bologna win the Derby dell'Emilia, coming back against Parma. Parma took an early lead, however, then also went down to 10 men when it was 1-1, and then Bologna ended up winning. Bologna also relatively tied up. And then we anyway already had Milan against Roma. That game was crazy. I think there should have been way more goals in there, also have to be said. And Roma started out with really, really good chances. I mean, so many. I think it was Nimbala, wasn't Ndika, who had another miss. It was really, I thought Milan are completely on the back foot and outplayed by Roma every which way. It did not look good. And yes, there were a couple of Leao runs, but that didn't amount to much. But then suddenly Bartesaghi plays the ball to Ricci, who then finds around midway Leao, who just goes past Ndika, really down to the touchline, reducing him to a pile of rubble in a way. And then just looking in the middle of the box, there is Strahinja Pavlovic, who ran up from defense. And this is probably his biggest strength. He's maybe, he's an emotional defender, but I don't think he's the greatest of all defenders. But he really likes to run into the box, and the way he finishes, this was a striker's finish. And Milan, against a run of play, took a 1-0 lead, I think, in the 38th minute. Fofana should have doubled that one. I mean, point blank range, you shouldn't pull it wide. Fofana was probably the weakest performer. Misplaced passes and so on. He had to be carried. Modric, Ricci worked really well. Fofana looked a little bit, the link-up that he should provide was not happening. And then the second half started in the same direction as the first half started. This time it's Milan wasting chance after chance. I mean, Leao again, and it should have been 2 or 3 at that point. It was absolutely mad how many chances they ended up missing. I think Nkunku even hit the post at one point. There were chances where you think, how did this not go over the line? really crazy stuff. So Roma missing big sitters in the first half and then Milan in the second half. And so Roma hung around. And can I just say that this Roma third kit is just gorgeous, and I was so happy that they played in that one and not in the awful yellow kit in this game. I also like Milan's home shirt this season. However, I don't like it when it's all played with black shorts, but I think it's a decent shirt overall. But that Roma one, pooh, is a really, really, really nice one. But in any case, so Roma hang around, and then Fofana gives away a free kick. And the free kick is taken by Pellegrini, and Fofana then with his elbow blocks the ball that would have gone potentially onto goal, and so it's a penalty. And Dybala, who I think has scored now 18 in a row or something, that steps up, and Mike Maignan, who was so terrible in penalty saves as of late, actually manages to save and keep Milan in the game. Roma cannot find an equalizer. I'm not sure if they would have really deserved an equalizer, but overall this was then Milan defending as they have been doing as of late. Really, really, really well. I mean, the stats of the game are staggering. The XG, I mean, it's only a 1-0 game, but the XG is 3.32 to 1.95 in favor of Milan. Possession is all Roma, 63%. But big chances, 6-1. I would contend that one because Roma really had 2 or 3 good chances. So it shouldn't be 6-1. But yeah, it's so... You know, the possession stats were all Roma's, but you could see that Milan is working now out of a very solid defense. Would I love if out of solid defense they not only launch devastating counterattacks? Yes, I very much would wish that. But on the other side, this is a Milan team. You can see they're fighting for each other. They really are a team, and that is something that has me actually looking quite positive forward because they have time to prepare and settle in. I think it's not inconceivable that they might be in a title race. We had Genoa, now without Patrick Vieira, who I think stepped down, getting on Monday evening a 2-1 win at Sassuolo. This was the first win of the season, so that's also interesting. And Lazio, 2-0 win over Cagliari, and Lazio also not too far off the pace. But Serie A is an absolutely crazy league at the moment. On the top and on the bottom, it is super tight. And even the midfield is really tight. So we have kind of 4 clusters. We have the top 4, Napoli 22, then Inter, Milan, Roma, all on 21 points. Then the ball comes with 18. Bologna, Juventus, Como also with 17, only one behind, and Lazio I think with 15. Also not too far off the pace, as is Udinese sitting in 9th place. A little bit an overlooked team. I mean, Cremonese has been taking all the headlines, but I think Cremonese will go a little bit more towards this middle. And then, yeah, Atalanta and Sassuolo Torino only with 13. You can say, yeah, midfield fodder, and especially for Atalanta, this is disappointing. So I can see why Juric is under pressure. But look at the bottom. Fiorentina. Hellas Verona also still winless, and then there's Pisa also still winless. Genoa have a win, but that only gets them now in 18th spot. And I think Parma, Lecce and Cagliari also are not looking super safe. Pisa probably the favorite to go down. Verona unfortunately also kind of in there, although if they continue playing like they played for instance against Inter, not that this will continue, could be a different story. Really looking forward to the next round already because we have another big game. I mean, yeah, big game. Lazio is not quite in there, but we have Inter against Lazio. We have Juve against Torino, which is probably the most one-sided derby that I can think of. Bologna, now Napoli. Napoli coming off the Champions League also. Now Bologna playing the Europa League, but that could be a tight one. Then we have also the derby of the desperate between Genoa and Fiorentina. Milan have to go to Parma and really have to make up on what they did last season there. So let's go a little bit more of a trip through Europe, and I want to start in the Netherlands, where, you know, PSV get a win, Feyenoord get a win, 5-2, 3-1, respectively, so not much to talk home about. We have AZ getting a 1-0 at Sparta Rotterdam, and Ajax only managing a 1-1 draw against Heerenveen. Really looking forward how this might go. Also, Go Ahead Eagles, who are now playing in Europe, also not that convincing. To me, the result that really sticks out is Heracles 8-2 over Zwolle. This is Heracles that just a couple of weeks ago shipped 7 at home to Feyenoord. So their last game was a 7-0 loss to Feyenoord, and now they have an 8-2 home win against a Zwolle team that, had now a couple of 2-2 draws, never really were that out of form. I mean, it's an absolutely nonsensical result. I mean, I have to say that the Eredivisie anyway is exceedingly goal-rich. I mean, they have a 3.4 goal average. Crazy stuff. This, I think, is the highest of the leagues that I'm watching at the moment, with the exception of the Champions League. But we know why it's there. But, it's also a little bit this symptom of the Netherlands, that it is very much a league where there are 2 or 3 teams that are above the rest. Although I think there's now a little middle class building in the Eredivisie. With Feyenoord, PSV, Ajax, with Ajax a little bit weaker, Z have been rather steadily in there. And then we have the Utrechts and the Twentes that could make it up there. I think they have the potential. Heerenveen, I am never quite sure about them, but they are very much mid-table, and I'm not sure if Sparta Rotterdam could ever realize their own potential. But with all these results, we still have the top 2 level on points. Feyenoord only leading because of goal difference. However, we know that they lost last week. Another rather nonsensical result came in Germany with Gladbach. This was winless Gladbach as far as I know. Suddenly winning 4-0 at St. Pauli. I mean, St. Pauli is towards the bottom of the table, but where did this come from? Really, really crazy result. On the other hand, we also have that Leipzig are in really good form, winning 3-1 over Stuttgart. This was the top game of the round, arguably, although not necessarily by the last standings, but by the current standings. And so Leipzig are establishing themselves as probably the only team that could chase down Bayern. And remember, they lost 6-0 against Bayern on the opening day. But the opening day, Bayern really like to really stomp all over the competition, which they again did against Leverkusen with a squad that was actually saving players for the big PSG game on Tuesday evening. Bayern, I mean, 9 wins in a row together with the cup. I think they have now 11 wins plus then in the Champions League. They are beating the record of the great Milan side under Capello. Yes, nominally they have beaten it, but I have to say Bayern play in a league where they are clearly the big fish. And yes, Milan in the 90s was also the big fish, but Milan in the 90s, Serie A in the 90s, was what the Premier League is now, where teams that would not even be close to superstars. I mean, in the 80s, Zico played for Udinese. This is something that still boggles my mind. One of the greatest Brazilians of all time play in tiny Udine. And I just saw the other day the Serie B goal scoring charts for 93, 94, where there were the Bierhofs and the Batistutas and so on in there. So Serie A back then were what the Premier League is now. And Milan having such a record of only wins to start the season still should rank a little bit higher. I still think that the unbeaten Scudetto in 91-92 for Milan gets way too little attention, because that was a much bigger achievement than what the Invincibles for Arsenal did, and everyone is crying out about them. But we're living in an English-speaking world, but that Milan team was irresistible, and the only flaw was that they were not in Europe. But having said all that, Bayern look absolutely imperious. I mean, with a second-string squad beating Leverkusen 3-0, really leading already 3-0 at the halftime, just says everything. Yes, and Leverkusen are not great, but the Bundesliga doesn't provide competition for Bayern. The Champions League probably will do for them, so we gotta see. But Bayern really, really strong, and I can only see a Bayern solo in this one. And I think we are looking again at least 5-6 in a row for Bayern at this very moment. Vincent Kompany, much maligned when he was appointed, doing a great job, and I think Bayern are now finding themselves after this kind of uneasy phase post-Corona, where they really had a hard time finding themselves. But now I think they're finding themselves, and I think Luis Diaz is one of the greatest acquisitions in Europe. Dortmund, a rather unremarkable 1-0 win over Augsburg. Augsburg still not good. I also thought that Frankfurt's 1-1 in Heidenheim was a disappointing result. Köln beat HSV 4-1. However, this was tight. HSV had an equalizer that would have made it 2-2, disallowed for an offside. And then it's 2 red cards that allow Köln to run away. But Köln will most likely stay in the Bundesliga. I even think HSV have a good chance there. And then Hoffenheim beat Wolfsburg 3-2. Much needed win for Hoffenheim, who are now going towards Europe. However, their leadership is a little bit in question there, whereas Wolfsburg have to look a little bit behind and over their shoulder. We've talked a lot about Bayern, PSG. PSG again stayed top of Ligue 1 with a meager 1-0 win over Nice. So nothing to talk home about. I think for me the most remarkable result came when Paris FC beat Monaco 1-0 away from home. And yeah, Monaco, having fired now Adi Hütter, still not finding traction. I think they hired Boscali from Union Saint-Gilloise, and this will take some time. I think such a firing as they did, it doesn't make much sense. I think there's something within the squad that is just not quite working out. OM stay behind PSG 1-0 over Auxerre, and then another rather remarkable result with Rennes beating Strasbourg 4-1. Strasbourg, who have been actually really good as of late. All the other results, I mean, we got a first win for Metz. Nantes is in trouble thanks to that one. But overall, there was nothing really exciting. But I think Ligue 1 is shaping up to be quite a competitive league. If you look at the top of the table, we have 6 teams within 4 points. PSG 2 ahead of OM and Lens. Then Lille, Monaco in there. Lyon is also a team, and we have next weekend coming up Lyon against PSG, also Strasbourg against Lille. I think there are quite some interesting games in there. So yeah, Ligue 1 is unfortunately a league that I would love sometimes to watch a little bit more, but I also have to say on the other side, when I then see fixtures from especially Serie A or in Spain or so on, Ligue 1 never really creeps up on me, although they do one thing smart. Their Sunday slot at 5:15 usually falls right ahead of where I, watch Serie A or there is a good game in La Liga, so they fall kind of in the dead zone. And if the Premier League doesn't dish up something good, or the Austrian Bundesliga, but which I have to watch anyway on a different device, there is usually a chance for me to watch a little bit Ligue 1. And if there's a big game like Lyon against PSG, quite likely that I'm gonna watch that one, at least I second screen it. Premier League, when you're finally talking about the Premier League, biggest league in the world. Yeah, it is, but it's so much talked about that I usually put it a little bit on the back burner. But yes, I watch it. It is the best league at the moment. And yeah, I had this status of the Premier League as the best league in the world with so much money. On one side, it is concerning, especially when you think that like a Bournemouth has a bigger budget than Milan and so on. But as I said, just 30 years ago, the same thing was true for Serie A. The stars and great players that you could find, and I would argue bigger name players that you could find in the lower levels of Serie A and Serie B, is quite similar to what we have in the Premier League now. And then we had La Liga once being the behemoth, but never really attracting, I think, the superstars outside of the big two, because La Liga has its very own makeup. But in any case, for me, the Premier League, I knew that I will watch the Derby in Linz, and the Sunday's matches were not the ones that will grab my attention. So the only game that I really paid attention to was Liverpool against Aston Villa. And yes, Villa had their early chances, but this was a much improved Liverpool side. And yes, they let go of the League Cup, blah, blah, blah. Easing up the schedule is probably not such a bad move overall. And they looked in control of that game. And yes, an Ekitike goal was disallowed for offside, rightfully so. But then Villa really gifted Mohamed Salah the go-ahead goal just before half. To the point, at this point, I almost had tuned out already of that game, because I was getting ready for halftime and doing some editing on my other podcast. So yeah, and then Gravenberg adds a second one, and Liverpool looked like the Liverpool from last season in a way. Maybe not the dominant Liverpool, but Liverpool that looked in control. So for me, this was more or less the most interesting game, and it is also a little bit nonsensical result because Villa beat Man City last weekend, and now they lose, deservedly so, to a Liverpool team that has been losing, I think, 4 in a row. So really, really weird. Arsenal, again, Arsenal's gonna waltz to this title if they keep up that form and if they stay away from injuries, beating Burnley quite easily, 2-0 at home. United actually had a 1-0 lead and quickly went down 2-1 at Forest and needed lucky equalize. I mean, it was great skill. It was a great goal. But yeah, the win run for United also came to an end. So in City, again, Holland scoring 3-1 against Bournemouth, the Bournemouth team that was second. So maybe this was a game that I should have watched. Remarkable also that West Ham, under Nuno Espirito Santo, not beat Newcastle 3-1. And what else? Palace 2-0 over Brentford. I think that's also remarkable, but I'm not too surprised. As I said, in the Premier League, it seems like it's a solo for Arsenal. City could get into it if they win a head-to-head, but I see Arsenal winning. Arsenal is so defensively solid. Not the exciting Arsenal from 2-3 seasons ago. This is now a team that is actually defense first, and you can see it. I mean, only 3 goals conceded and only 18 goals scored, and 18 goals scored is not a bad record, but it is kind of, Chelsea have that, Liverpool have that, and Arsenal have that. So yeah, there you go. Sunderland still up in the top 4, managing a 1-1 against Everton yesterday evenings. Was a semi-interesting game. We also have to talk about Spurs, who now fall down to 6, losing 1-0 at home to Chelsea, barely creating any chances. Seems to be the big story coming out of England. Yeah, I hear that Spurs are not clicking, blah, 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 but overall, I really have to say that I find give the manager some time and maybe support him in the transfer market. That has always been a problem for Spurs, if you were to ask me. If we look just at next weekend, I mean, there's one big match, and probably this will take now some center stage. Although it's not the big match that we were used to. City against Liverpool is just on Sunday at 5:30. Let's see if I watch that or if I watch the top game in the Austrian Bundesliga. Arsenal have to go to Sunderland, which suddenly becomes a much bigger game than it used to be. And Spurs host United. Early kickoff, definitely an interesting one too. And I should not forget about the derby between Palace and Brighton, two hipsters team. Let's see what Palace can do. And as this is kind of an old school podcast, we finish on the Iberian Peninsula in a way. Honestly, the biggest result for me from La Liga was the crazy derby, Basque Derby between Real Sociedad and Athletic Club, with the Real Sociedad win in stoppage time. Both teams, and I heard that this is the first time that derby has been decided in stoppage time, which is really, really weird statistic. Both teams rather in trouble. I mean, Nico Williams has still not played for Athletic Club, and they are now mid-table, but also looking a little bit over their shoulders. Real Sociedad desperately needed that win. They're now 2 points behind. So yeah, interesting stuff for sure. I also want to point out that Celta Vigo get a second win in a row after having so many draws. They have 2 wins in a row, and I think those were even 2 away wins. Yes, Osasuna last week and now Levante this week. So Celta, only 2 losses, but tons of draws. But we have to talk about the big clubs, of course. Atletico 3-0 over Sevilla, rather convincing. Real Madrid against a hapless Valencia side, 4-0. Vinny missing a penalty in that one as well. However, he was substituted together with Mbappe. Sure, there was something planned there. It was a horrible situation for Xabi Alonso, to be honest, to manage that. And Barcelona 3-1 over Elche is a very deceiving result. Elche gave Barcelona some trouble. They're promoted side. That now, just now they're finding that they're starting to lose, and people are getting used to them. But Barcelona did not play well. This was not a convincing win. They won it thanks to 2 quick goals in the first half, and then a little bit holding on as well. And yeah, the biggest news I think coming out of Barcelona is that they're now testing the Camp Nou, and maybe after the international break we will have the first game of Barcelona at the Camp Nou. The new Camp Nou. Should this be then Camp Nou squared and whatever? It's just such a story. I have to say, I at least used to be in Spain, definitely more on the Barcelona side. But Barcelona have been majorly annoying me now over the past few years. And so, yeah, everything they're doing, it doesn't scream well-run club. And yes, they have exciting players. They can still play great, but it just feels bleh, yucky a little bit. And I wanna end it in Portugal, where we also did not have any really outstanding results. I mean, Porto managed a 2-1 against Braga. Braga had them a little bit on the ropes when it was 2-1. Benfica, huge 3-0 over Vitória. So those were, at Vitória, even those were the big outstanding results. Sporting only 2-0 against Alverca. That is that. But we had another 8-goal game. Casa Pia 3, Estrela 5. That is unusual. When we get a lot of goals in Portugal, it's because one of the big three is beating up on another team. Nothing like that. And these are, two teams from the bottom half. So really crazy one and a crazy result, but shows that the leagues are alive. However, unlike the Netherlands, the Portuguese league has only a 2.65 goal average, so not the most scoring league in Europe at the moment. And while we're at it, let's just look at these numbers. What's the highest scoring league? I said it's the Netherlands, 3.43, then followed by Germany, 3.17, and France with 2.9. Actually, the Austrian league with 2.72 is not too bad, and then it's the Premier League and La Liga, relatively level, 2.68 and 2.66 respectively. And Portugal also in there, 2.65. So, those are pretty much on average. I would say the Austrian league as well. And there's one league that scores 2 little goals, and that's Italy. I think once they have straightened out the penalty laws, and Italy was really great in there, it all came down again. And yeah, not good for the league. But if you have an Allegri in there who loves to win by conceding no goals, it's probably also. But Serie A, as exciting as it is, I think this is also, there are 2 little goal scorer, and that keeps it kind of low. And we see in Europe that Serie A is at the moment a little bit lagging behind, because the top teams are also very much concentrated in the league. Makes for an exciting league. Little bit like in Austria, but you have to question the quality. So Serie A have probably the same problem as the Austrian Bundesliga, however on a much, much higher level. Just out for completeness sake, at the moment the Champions League has a 3.7 goal average. It's mad, but so many lopsided results, whereas the Europa League and the Conference League 2.5 and 2.38 respectively. It tells you also a little bit about these, that it's much more level and a much tighter competition than the Champions League is. Yeah, we have Champions League this evening. Quite some interesting matches coming up this round. I mean, I said Bayern against PSG is the big one. We also have, I think, on Wednesday, Liverpool against Real Madrid. I also have an eye on Napoli against Frankfurt. That's an early kickoff already. So yeah, definitely interesting stuff coming up. I will do a full review probably on Friday. I want to get the Europa League in as well. So watch out for that one too. This week I didn't have a big topic. I mean, I went off on tangents on a few more, especially on the Linz Derby. You got a little bit more background there. But yeah, I really hope that you enjoyed this episode. I'm still finding my way into this podcasting experience in English, and I know that I probably have to change. My problem is that I like to keep up what I've been doing, and it's really hard to just stop it. But yeah, I will try to see if I can find something more interesting to talk about. There are plenty of topics that I have on hand, but I have to find the right outlet for it, the right time to post these. But in any case, it was an exciting weekend for me. As I said, 6-point weekend with 2 really big wins. Only 1-0 wins. I would have wished for more goals, to be honest. In both cases, especially the Milan-Roma game, there should have been more goals. And Milan-Roma has been a game that has produced a lot of goals over the years. But yeah, at least It was somewhat exciting, and I got the wins. I'm smiling now, and I'm looking forward to the next weekend. And then the international break is coming up, and this is the big one where we are really looking at World Cup qualification ending in Europe, and that will be big. Any case, please let me know what you thought about all the things that have been happening in this past week, especially if you have any other thoughts on Austrian Bundesliga and on Serie A. But anything else, fill me in, comments below. If you enjoyed this podcast, please leave me a subscription either on Spotify or on YouTube. I think I'm also on Apple Podcasts, so I would be very happy for that. Also, if you have the time, please write a nice review. This would also really, really help me out. But be it as it may, I will talk to you soon about more things in my soccer universe very soon. Bye!